So yes, if you're reading the title, it's true. Creed 3 never needed Rocky. This is coming from a fan who has watched all the Rocky movies, watched all those inspirations that quoted the Rocky movies, and who loves seeing him in Creed 1 and 2. But I'll put everything I own, which isn't a lot since I'm a college student, on the fact that because Rocky isn't in Creed 3, it automatically made it a much better story than it would have been otherwise. Now, I know, before you click off, just follow me here a little bit. We won't hate on Rocky for the entire video, I swear. Now, having watched Creed 1 and 2 these past few weeks, you get a sense that the Creed movies aren't really about Creed. I mean, for example, Creed 1 dealt with Adonis owning his name and entering the boxing world. So much screen time was devoted to Rocky. This movie heavily relies on Rocky 1 through 4, which is fine. I mean, what legacy sequel franchise hasn't? I mean, look at Scream, Star Wars, anything. I mean, anything really within the past 30 years that have had a remake, reboot, sequel trilogy, something. They all rely on their past movies heavily within the first couple outings. But this over-reliance on Rocky and his storylines with the first two movies bogs down Adonis's character development. And if you're making a franchise, a trilogy about one specific character and put his last name on the posters and in the title, then I feel like the main character should undoubtedly be Creed, which sometimes it really doesn't feel like it. Take, for example, Creed 2. It's basically Rocky 4 Part 2. While Drago did kill Apollo Creed, Adonis really had no clue who his father was at the time, and there weren't really any dramatic scenes with Drago and Adonis, with the father and with Creed, because Drago is, of course, the last name. Duh. It just seems like Adonis is cleaning up after Rocky, and again, Rocky steals much of the spotlight in this movie too. Even after becoming the heavyweight champion, Adonis still needs Rocky's guidance to take out Victor Drago. I thought that I should be pretty polite, and before going on, explain everything about there is to know about Creed 3. I'll give a spoiler warning, but that should have been pretty obvious that I was going to talk everything and anything there is about Creed 3 from the title. If you haven't watched Creed 3 yet, what are you doing? What are you doing, man? Get out there. Who doesn't want to see Michael B. Jordan with his shirt off for 2.5 hours? Now, what I suggest you do is to save this video for later and book it to your nearest movie theater because you won't want to miss it. Now, Creed 3 was a full-on Creed movie. We didn't have to worry about dividing time between the mentor and his apprentice because Creed had become a mentor himself. Creed didn't have to fight Rocky's villains, or Drago, or even Clubber Lang's kid, which I know a lot of viewers wanted Dame to be his kid, which would have kind of been redundant, and we would have had the exact same situation we had in Creed 2, where the kid of the famous boxer that got defeated by Rocky didn't really have a motive, and that kind of left Victor Drago a little one-noted, because who is he as a character if not just his dad? Which is, I'll get to in a little bit, but which is why I really like Victor Drago coming back in this movie, because it's a little bit of a redemption arc for his character. Not to crap on Creed 2, because when I watched it, I really enjoyed a lot of the fight scenes and just how big Victor Drago looked in comparison to Creed. But I really wasn't convinced of Tessa Thompson's and Michael B. Jordan's characters actually loving each other. It felt pretty standard in the first movie, but it felt really cheesy in the second and pretty forced. However, in this third film, they really feel like a team where they both have an agenda and something to do in the movie. Now, that's not the only character to have improved from Rocky's removal. Adonis's kid is adorable, and for a child actor, she did amazing. I'm so glad they hired an actual deaf actor to play a deaf character, and that all the signing was actually correct, and that the actors had to learn a lot, especially from Omara's actor herself because, of course, like I said, she was deaf, so she knew how to sign properly. There's a beautiful quote by Michael B. Jordan that reads, and this is like verbatim, "The ASL component was something that I love because we're a movie about boxing. Adonis uses his hands to hurt people and to win in a fight, violent at times, but also he uses his hands to communicate to the most precious people around him. The juxtaposition between the two, I thought, was really poetic." And I think that was beautifully stated. I don't think I really could have come up with that with my own, but I would have to agree with them because in the movie there is a lot of distinction between fighting to fight someone and fighting for yourself. And boxing isn't just about hitting the other guy as hard as you can. It's, again, about how hard you can hit or be hit and get back up. Well, like I said, also, Victor Drago makes a return in this movie and was more than just a big guy with big muscles. His redemption arc from being a Russian who is constantly manipulated by others to do their bidding to now helping Creed at his lowest was something that I thoroughly enjoyed and was not expecting at all. And also to have the first main villain back was nice to see, especially because Creed got that upper hand on him, and now we can rest assured that Creed could basically take anyone in the Creed franchise. Now, to focus solely on Creed 3, because this is mainly what the video is about, we get to see how Adonis handles his own conflicts by himself without Rocky in his corner. He makes mistakes, and of course he has to clean up his own messes. It's like a great parallel to a lot of Spider-Man movies, because if you look into the Spider-Man movies like 1, 2, and 3, with Tobey Maguire, he makes his own villains, and so it's really compelling to see him clean up after his own messes, but also to kind of reflect and see how he can stop being such a screw-up. And in this, it's the same way. We see that Creed blames himself for what happened, but throughout the movie, he gets a lot of catharsis. Now, he essentially created Dame and made him into a villain, which makes it all more satisfying when he's able to get the upper hand against his old friend, which, this goes without saying, Jonathan Major was really great in this movie. Haven't seen him do anything with King outside of Loki Season 1, but he was great in that. He's gonna be a really big named actor for probably the rest of his life just because of the MCU and this movie alone. So I'm really excited to see where he goes from here. He was just an absolute machine. He really made the conflict between Adonis and Dame feel real and authentic, and so I'm really excited to see where he goes from here. The movie, unlike the previous two, really dive deeper into Adonis's past and fleshes out the relationships that Adonis has. We get to see him more as a father, more interactions with other boxers and his coach Duke, and we get to see his final goodbyes with his mom. And man, that really hurts. Now, I'm not really the guy to tear up over movies, but I was tearing up when she called him Apollo. I really thought it was a beautiful scene. And it was nice to see Adonis take on this father role and to be something that his father never was to him, because he understands the importance of this relationship. And since this is a video about why Creed 3 is better without Stallone, I think it's important to at least touch on why he wasn't in the picture. There's honestly various reports ranging from him not agreeing to the darker storyline to being disappointed that he wasn't going to be an executive producer on the film. But this is crazy considering Rocky 4 and a lot of Rocky 5 was pretty dark. This dealt with death in the ring. It also dealt with his first student switching sides, him losing his entire fortune, and him having PTSD from the main fight in Rocky 4. Nevertheless, even if Stallone was in the third movie, I wouldn't see his character getting a huge role anyways. Because at the end of Creed 2, we see that Rocky gives the spotlight to Adonis after he wins against Drago, because Adonis has successfully made a name for himself in boxing history. Rocky goes back to see his kid Robert and rekindles his relationship with his family that he hasn't seen in too many years. I feel like having Rocky in this movie for more than a cameo would have undermined that pretty great ending in the second film. With Stallone being gone, I think it also gave the franchise a chance to try new things. I mean, for starters, the soundtrack is amazing. It is the perfect workout album, peak, I would say. The relationship between Dame and Adonis feels super fleshed out and authentic, and it feels super important, and stakes feel super high at the end of the third movie as opposed to in the first two, where he was fighting more so for himself and not for his past. We get to see a new stylized form of fighting that came directly from Michael B. Jordan, and he credits a lot of these fight scenes to anime, which, if you're anything like me, you were probably worried when you first heard the statement, because it's like, A, anime kind of sucks, but also B, because how would they effectively transfer that into a very grounded, gritty, realistic take on boxing? I mean, besides the fact that everyone in the Rocky movies never blocks and they just take punches to the chins like it's nothing. I think it did turn out pretty well, though. But the final scene with Dame, where they're fighting, when it cuts from like round 3 to 12, it was very jarring for this movie to have that, because it really wasn't stylized in a very metaphorical way beforehand. But I feel like it worked fine. It was just a little bit awkward, like a real conclusion to Adonis's boxing career, and I couldn't be more grateful that it went out on such a high note. Now, would I want them to make a fourth film? Potentially. I mean, if they have the correct story for it, right? Like a really good story for why Adonis should come back. I would love to see Rocky again, but anything more than a cameo, and it would seem like they're only bringing him back for fan service. I feel like he needs to be there more, maybe as a emotional support, or like to bring him back for a training montage, but anything more so where he has more than 10 minutes of screen time with his own storylines dedicated to cancer or something. And I feel like you're really driving the spotlight away from the main character and putting it on this old one where we've already had so many storylines with him. Now, if they do decide to do more spin-offs, because that's what we've been hearing, I feel like the next logical choice that they would do is have Amara get into the boxing ring. Now, they could also just title this Creed 4 later on, because, I mean, she would still have the Creed name, so it makes sense. They're carrying on the legacy. But having a deaf boxer and a girl for that fact would be really interesting and bring something new to the franchise. I couldn't really see them diving again into Adonis's past with another random boxer from his group home. So I feel like if they would make a Creed 4, it would have to be on someone new. And if they don't, and it is Adonis again, I feel like we're retreading stuff that already happened in Creed 3, where he was out of retirement, then went back in, and also retreading some very important plot points from Rocky Balboa. With all that said, I would like to know what your thoughts are on Creed 3, and if you still think the movie would have been significantly better with Rocky's inclusion. Now, if you like this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing. I am just a college kid, and I will see you in the next one. By the way, this had like 0 editing because I'm currently studying for midterms and finalizing trip details because I'll be going to Washington, D.C. over spring break for about 9 days to talk about prison reform. And if you're interested in that, we'll probably be having some podcast episodes coming out talking about that. Thank you. Hey, thanks for getting to the end of the video. If you liked it, consider subscribing. If you want to see the curated playlist for this video, click the top picture. And other videos that you might like will be posted in the bottom picture. This has been Just Another College Kid, and I'll see you in the next one.